Good morning, family. Welcome back to Bible class here at the park as we are walking our way through the story, through this narrative of the Bible in one big narrative form. It's been an amazing journey. I say it's been an amazing journey. The past few weeks, if you've been trotting along in the past few weeks, man, there's been some hard moments, right? As you're really coming to grips with what the story really entailed from the beginning up until now, there's been quite a few moments of almost hopelessness, but then this little twinge of, oh, maybe it's not dead yet. Maybe not all hope is lost just yet. But man, it's been hard as these people of Israel have been wrestling with God. And man, haven't they wrestled with God? In fact, that's what the word Israel means, right? Is to wrestle with God. And so as you read through the Old Testament, I'm coming at this morning imagining someone who really is reading through all this for the first time. And as we come to grips with what's going on, and these people who have a God who is doing everything for them, who has given them everything, but are really struggling with their faithfulness, their dependence on Him, their obedience, I can maybe start to see how I think I've got some things maybe similar to what I've got some struggles maybe similar to what these Israelites have. They wrestled with obedience when they do believe, but idolatry when they don't. They wrestle with identity as the people of God and even assimilation with the cultures around them. Well, do we ever, even as believers in God, do we ever struggle with obedience to Him? Well, sure. Can we, in maybe our weakest moments, put other things on the throne where God should really be, which is idolatry? Yes. And we wrestle with really keeping our identity as a child of God and as a follower of Him above everything else. Do we struggle with that versus really just assimilating and kind of becoming whatever the culture around us wants us to be and thinks we should be and thinks is best? Well, yeah, we see that all the time. I see that all the time. All of these are personal struggles for me. And I believe I'm not alone in that, but all these are personal struggles. I have similar struggles to the people of Israel. So what I understand most is, man, if I want to be a person, maybe I'm reading through the Bible because I want to believe that I have hope of being accepted by God. What I'm figuring out here is, as I'm realizing all the similarities I have with the people of Israel, one of the things I realize is I need help. I can't do it. Because the things that I've been doing so far aren't working. But the hope that somehow still seems to exist. And to point to what God plans to do, the hope that somehow still seems to exist seems to point to what God plans to do rather than what I'm capable of doing. My hope is no longer in, I really think I can nail it this time. I think I can get my act together and go on the right path. I think I can do this. And my hope in and of myself is really dead by this point. And so what the hope seems to point to is that, as we've seen all through the Old Testament, through all the struggles, through all the wrestling, that God is the one who is doing something to keep the relationship alive. So my hope now is that as much as I'm struggling, as much as I'm falling short, as much as my head is bowed into shame and defeat, my hope is now that God is going to do something. So, to the extent that I'm aware of my need for help, I'm reading through the story, just desperately searching for how this is going to get worked out. Because whatever it is for these Old Testament people, maybe, just maybe, it will also work for me. So, you realize that you've done wrong, and you can't be really in the presence of this holy, blameless God, and all your attempts to do better keep falling short. So, the New Testament starts. And let's paint this picture as if we're sitting in a courtroom and you're playing a couple different roles in what we know of this courtroom scene. In this courtroom scene, you have the judge and you have the plaintiff who's bringing the accusation. You have the defendant who is the one being accused, and you have the jury, or the ones who are really deciding what is best and what really fits for what the punishment should be, and offering to the judge what we believe the claim should be on the accused. And so really, I think we can see ourselves playing both the jury and the defendant. So we're the jury who is looking at the whole case, deciding whether the defendant is guilty or innocent, but we're also playing the defendant, the one who has been accused of being guilty. And so the hardest part is that we can't seem to get around that we as the jury are holding ourselves as the defendant guilty. That's what we realize when we come face to face with the holy God. We have to realize and understand the truth that we find ourselves guilty in standing in the presence of God. So just as the judgment is almost ready to be handed down, someone comes in and claims to be able to take the punishment away from you. The punishment has been set. The wages of this particular case, it's a death sentence. But someone comes in claiming they have the ability to take this sentence, this punishment, away from you. So who is this person, and what gives them the right? What makes them able to make this claim, to stand in for you? Well, we have 4 pieces of evidence that are submitted to the jury. And these pieces of evidence are the first 4 books of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If you've been reading through the story, we just get to the first couple chapters of Matthew and of Luke, and even just the first chapter of John. So what these 4 pieces of evidence start with claiming is that there's a baby that's born. But what you can see in how the story unfolds of this baby being born are how it fulfills the Old Testament prophecies of the one who is going to come and save God's people, of the one who would come, who is able to take this sentence away. So there's a baby being born here in the first little section of the New Testament. There's a baby born that offers hope because of the crazy amount of prophecies that this baby, this child, fulfills just in the process of being born in the first couple of years of life. We have a couple examples. Him being called Emmanuel from Isaiah. Him coming out of Egypt because he escaped to Egypt immediately after he was born, very soon after he was born, and came back from Egypt. Him being born in Bethlehem, him living in Nazareth. And we could go on, but these are prophecies that this child fulfills. And what it points to, what these passages in the Old Testament that these prophecies are referring to, is that one is coming who is going to be able to stand in the place of God's people, who is going to be able to save and redeem his people. There's one who is being born. So today's chapter in the story isn't the entire story, but it's the beginning of the fulfillment of what God had in mind all along to get his people back from the bondage of sin. So me reading through this for the first time, man, what hope this might be. What hope this offers. That as we see the hope being offered to this nation of Israel, remember, I've recognized how I am the people of God. I am the one who has struggled with obedience and faithfulness and have done the worst of the worst of idolatry and allowing other cultures to come in and define who I am. I have separated myself from God, and what in the world, what possibly could there be to bring me back into the presence of God and be accepted in the presence of God, to be looked at by the judge as not one who is being handed a death sentence, but one who is being redeemed in that. What could possibly happen? And I see that in the story here, what is happening to the nation of Israel, I feel very personally is happening for me as well. And that's the whole point. That what is happening for Israel is happening for us as well. We've talked about things that happen in the lower story and the upper story. The lower story being the things that are actually playing out on earth with people and individuals and the rise and fall of people and how people are behaving. And the upper story being what God is doing kind of in the background, the providence of God, how he's working in the lives of people to accomplish his will. What's God's plan in this whole thing being the upper story. And what we see is the upper story, what God has in mind to do. And the lower story is what God has in mind to do. They come together in the most beautiful way here. There's a few moments throughout the history of the Bible that God you could call them kind of overlaps of heaven and earth, where heaven and earth come together and overlap. The first one was really creation itself. Then you have the tabernacle. Then you have the temple. And now what we have here is God coming to earth in human form. And so now this new version of the overlap in heaven and earth is now being manifest into this child that is being born. It's an unbelievable act of hope for the nation of Israel as we read through the story. But I feel this hope as well, because this is my story. So the head that has been bowed for so long in sin and shame and just the hopelessness that has sunk in, the head that has been bowed for so long, in this chapter 22 of the story, what we see is that head can look up for the first time in a long time and say, wait a minute, you mean this isn't the end for me? This isn't this isn't my death sentence? You mean there's someone here that can help? You mean there's someone that is actually able to stand in the gap? Is that what's happening here? And so that's what we see. As this child is born in the first part of the New Testament, we see that it's not just a baby that's born, but hope itself. And so now we can look up and really start to pay attention to what is God doing to bring his people back to him. I hope you guys have enjoyed the story so far. And man, this is, as the old idiom goes, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. He has arrived. He is here. That sentence of death that's been on your shoulders and sitting on you, that you've realized yourself that you are guilty of, now has hope of being lifted off of you, because the one who is prophesied is here. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. The Sunday that you're watching this just happens to be Father's Day, which is an amazing correlation, isn't it? Maybe just coincidence, 'cause, we don't talk about this every Father's Day, but this Father's Day is the introduction from a father introducing his son to the world, and how that son is the fulfillment of everything he had in mind. Hope you guys have a great day, great Sunday, whenever you're watching this. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.